Welcome back, guys, to another college football team season preview. Today we are doing Notre Dame football, and I'm joined with Jackson Groff from the Three and Out podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course, man. I'm excited. When you emailed me and you said, "Hey, man, I love the show, love Three and Out, love to talk Notre Dame." I thought the same thing. I said, "Hey, let's get on here. Let's talk football." Anytime I talk football with someone, man, I love the college football industry and the space, the sports all growing, and yeah, just like it's June 17th. Football is coming up shortly, and especially a team like Notre Dame that's super excited, man. It'll be fun talking some ball with you. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, no problem. So, as in order to talk about this year, we have to talk about last year and the results of last year. So, no Jeremiah Love anymore, no Jadarian Price, and last year went 10-2, barely missed the college football playoff. I know everyone has their own thoughts on that. I think it's more the committee's fault than anybody else's, just the way they
Mm,
handled it.
yeah.
But yeah, last year, I think you had a relatively, not, I don't want to say tough schedule, but it was a solid, respectable schedule. I would say it was a little bit above the ACC and Big 12, but not quite at Big 10 SEC level. But the only problem was you lost your two toughest games.
Mm, Yeah, and I think that was one thing for Notre Dame. If you could go back, and I don't know if they control the slots of where these teams are scheduled, or if that's more the NCAA or whoever runs the independents. Like that's something that if you were Marcus Freeman with a new quarterback, who actually in both those games, TJ Carr didn't really put Notre Dame in bad situations outside of that one interception in the first half. Against Texas A&M, you would rather have it like this year where they do play Miami in November, and now you have a lot of returning production coming back. So I was actually at that A&M Notre Dame game, and I knew instantly when Tyler Buckner, botched the hold, lost by 1 point, knew that was going to happen. Knew the season was 2 games. In the moment when they lost to A&M, I said it right when it happened. I thought Notre Dame didn't have a chance to make the college football playoff just because I thought it was an uphill. And what their schedule, to your point, Boise State didn't pan out the way that we thought they were going to pan out. USC was a ranked opponent, but they kind of fell off and had 4 losses. And then you kind of look down the schedule of teams like maybe like a Pittsburgh that ended up being ranked, or what would Stanford be like towards the end of the season, or even an Arkansas, like was an SEC highlight. And they
Yeah.
kind of played some teams tough at the beginning of the season. Then Notre Dame came in and beat them by 50. Didn't look as impressive, as it starts to come along, which is one of those things for Notre Dame that's kind of a disadvantage. And the whole argument about them being independent and they should move conferences or whatever. And now you come to this year where, your schedule is going to be probably worse than last year. Obviously, you don't have A&M on your schedule, and them having A&M the last 2 years and how they performed has been a massive boost for Notre Dame to even get them to be where you mentioned earlier. The committee snubbed them. It was the committee's fault. They shouldn't even have had Notre Dame to be in the top 12 to begin with.
Yeah.
We can have that conversation here or whatever too. But for the most part, last year, yeah, man, I think it was Notre Dame, new quarterback with CJ Carr. I think he had his freshman moments maybe for a split second, but for the most part, I thought he looked phenomenal from the jump. And then the defensive coordinator change was definitely significant those first 2 weeks. Chris Finch coming in, he kind of wanted to simplify his own like zone scheme where Notre Dame is more of an aggressive man team. So I think those two factors, and you play your two toughest opponents, like I said, A&M and Miami, your first 2 weeks, was why Notre Dame had the season they had. Most teams would celebrate for 10-2, but if you're a Notre Dame team that's independent, you don't have a conference, you strive for championships every year. Like it wasn't a season that they were going to be happy about, in the offseason.
Yeah, and in this modern era of college football, a 10-2 season for Notre Dame is like an 8-4 season for like an SEC or a Big
Oh
Ten
yeah.
team in
Yeah.
terms
10
of
and 2 in the
college
Big
football
Ten and
record.
the SEC, you're making the playoff,
Oh yeah.
right?
So also, I do want to get into something else, and you brought up briefly the schedule, the USC thing, and I don't want to spend too much
Mm.
time on this because I think it's just they're going to play each other again in 2029. We've seen the reports, but this is one of those schedules, and Notre Dame. I'm going to be honest, I don't like the notion that Notre Dame plays a soft schedule because normally they don't, and I do respect they're. It feels like they're always on the road week one, which is a tough thing to do. So I do
Mm.
want to say I respect that, but this is one of those years where you kind of look. You look at their schedule, like Wisconsin, they're not going to probably pan out to be as good as you think. North Carolina, stuff like that. And you're like, that you going to Southern Cal November 28th, to finish off the season. Let's say you're playing like a ranked USC team. That kind of leaves you off a pretty good note. Kind of like what you did in 2024, where I don't want to say you guys were a fringe playoff team then because you weren't, but people were like, oh, is Notre Dame for real? And then, because
Mm.
people hadn't really heard from you guys since the week one Texas A&M game. And then you go into Southern Cal at the end of the year and just put up 49. So that's kind of one of the instances where like, maybe you miss USC on the schedule there.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to play USC. I love
Yeah.
beating USC. Notre Dame like beats USC every single year, and I understand. I understand Lincoln arguments side of it where it's like, hey,
Mhm.
we do have to play. I'm looking at the schedule this year.
Yeah.
Oregon, Ohio
Ohio
State,
State.
Penn State's not as great, but on the road, a tough environment.
Yeah.
Something that Lincoln Riley strived or struggled, I should say, with is winning on the road, especially in the Big
Yeah.
Ten. He's not been able to do it since he's been there.
Couldn't
He's
do it
been
in
an
the
overrated coach, in
Pac-12.
my opinion. Like I'm not a big fan of him and what he's done. And I think the tradition of it and the fact that the USC alumni came after him is what makes this game so significant.
Mhm.
But I mean, Notre Dame tried everything with USC to try to bump it up. They try to bump it down, but they don't want to bump it down because of the weather in Notre Dame and that kind of thing. So I don't know, man. I see the side of USC with all the Big Ten schedules or all the Big Ten opponents, and them not having to play Notre Dame. It's a good non-conference, but as we've seen in the committee, like the committee only values your strength of record. They only value how many losses that you have. They don't really care about the non-conference because most people are trying to dodge the non-conference schedules, which I hope one day that we come to agreement where Big Ten plays SEC. That's kind of like a non-conference game in each play around 9 conference games in themselves too. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's sad, man. I love beating Notre Dame or beating USC every year. I think Notre Dame is a much better program than they are. But I agree with you. I think the rivalry will come back in 2029. Hopefully, we can get it squared away here soon.
Yeah. So now we're gonna get into kind of the depth chart and like the roster this year, and we already talked about CJ Carr. So CJ Carr, I believe, is the Heisman favorite right now. It fluctuates between him, Dante Moore, and Arch Manning every day.
Yeah, he is.
Which, big jump. If I would have told you after that Miami game, hey, going into this year, CJ Carr would be the Heisman favorite and probably the favorite to be the number one pick in the draft as well. But I mean, that doesn't really mean anything because Carson Beck was the favorite to be the number one pick a couple years ago. But CJ Carr, I mean, a lot's gonna be expected of him this year. And I know you have guys like Anais Williams, who I'm sure will just be not as good as Jeremiah Love, but just one of your other great running backs, kind of like Chris Tyree, Andrick Estime, kind of guys like that.
Mm.
But CJ Carr, like the pass game's gonna be a big thing for you guys, which has not been something in my lifetime.
Yeah, and even last year too. Like you saw a guy in Malachi Fields who kind of emerged. We
Oh
knew
yeah.
he was going to be a beast
He's
for
gonna
coming
be good
from
in the
Virginia.
NFL.
He's going to be great in the NFL, like you said, of the Giants. And then Jaden Fajon was a guy where Greathouse got hurt. We had other injuries in the receiver group, and it was kind of a young year for guys like Cam Williams or Micah Gilbert, who were going to be asked, to do more on the outside this year and fill that big body role. They didn't really go out and get any transfer portal receivers, which was kind of shocking to me. How the last couple of years, Will Pauling also included was a Wisconsin transfer. He had kind of a late rise in the year, but he also played well. But they trust their room and they trust the recruitment, and I'm excited to see with the additions of Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter coming from Ohio State, 2 guys that were 4 or 5 stars that didn't see themselves playing for Ohio State because they always produce 5-star wide receivers every single year. Come over to Notre Dame and play with CJ Carr. I think Mylan Graham's a name where
Yeah. He
you got to
was a
say
big name in recruiting too.
big name recruit coming out of high school. I've seen spring clips, and they're only spring game clips of him and CJ Carr having great connection. I think Quincy Porter, again, a 6'4" guy. And I think one thing that Notre Dame does well, them and Oregon are 2 programs, and maybe even Texas too. I'd have to check their numbers. Is they're really good at keeping guys, really good retention, despite how deep it is. Like Jaden Greathouse, a guy that we didn't even mention last year. He redshirted the entire year. He was dealing with hamstring injuries. He flashed in the CFP run they had in 2024. He's coming back off a redshirt year. So you add him on top of Fajon and all these products to have for Notre Dame. I think it's an exciting pass group where a quarterback that once you have a no-look pass, once you have a no-look touchdown pass against Notre Dame in your first ever game, this guy's going to be different. And I think CJ Carr, I think he has it. I think Denbrock coming in a year 2, I think you're going to see more of that 2023 LSU when Denbrock was coaching Jaden Daniels. Not saying the mobility factor of Daniels, but he averaged around 28 passing attempts a game. I think CJ Carr, I wouldn't be shocked if he throws the ball 30 times a game with Aeneas Williams there. And I know you lose Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. The running game people are all concerned about. I would say this about the running game. Yeah, Notre Dame's always been able to run the football. You return all 5 offensive linemen. You have 3 rotational running back, or you have 3 rotational offensive linemen coming in as well. And yes, it's not going to be that explosive running game, but Aeneas Williams, Young, and James are guys that are very capable of bursts, can burst through tackles, can run through tackles and get you 5 yards. So you're not getting Notre Dame fans and people in college football, you may not expect those 60-yard bursts. You may expect a 60-yard touchdown of Aeneas Williams kind of out of the backfield with a wheel route like he did against Penn State. You're not going to see that like you did with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, but you're going to see an experienced backfield and just a group of three guys, one that's 240 and two guys that can be that receiving back too. So it's a lot to be excited about offensively. And I think when you have your offensive coordinator coming back, who's been seasoned with a quarterback who knows the playbook, now you're going to put more on his plate to kind of check in front of the line of scrimmage like Mendoza did with Cignetti last year and create those one-on-one matchups for Mylan Graham. I can ramble on and on and on. I'll toss it to you, bro. I know this is your shock. Keep kind of talking
please,
about it, but
please.
Yeah, man. No, Notre Dame's offense, it's going to be exciting to see. And I think this year they've always had slow starts because they've always played their toughest opponents early. Luckily, they play Wisconsin, Rice. You go through your schedule, it's not great. It's going to be good for the continuity and to just get some passes going early for CJ Carr to kind of build that confidence up with this receiver group.
Oh yeah, no. You brought up Mike Denbrock, which I'm really glad you did. I mean,
Love Denbrock.
Oh, great.
So funny story with Denbrock. My sophomore year, this was like, I feel old saying this because at the time you don't feel old. It's like 2016. It's like 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And Denbrock was actually the receiver coach there when I was running routes. And I got to know him pretty well. And I wore like these orange shorts because my dad was like, you got to stand out at these camps. You can't just wear like the same old black and gray shorts. You got to stand out. So I would move up two groups. I was a sophomore, but I was running routes with the seniors because I wanted to be in front of the Notre Dame coaches, and that's where the players were. And I just wanted to be up there and got to know Denbrock pretty well, and to see him leave Notre Dame and do his success there and then come back. I think he's a guy that loves Notre Dame and is just going to be there for the long run. But to be able to have him and your defensive coordinator along with Freeman, like, I think that's huge, especially with a team like Oregon, where it's like Oregon's got all this production coming back, but now you've got two guys that haven't called an offense or a defense before. It's a big benefit for Notre Dame for sure.
Him and Notre Dame feels like Josh McDaniels and the Patriots to me. I don't know. It's just like they can't get away from each other. But also, you brought up two guys from Ohio State, which I wanted to talk about, Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham, which is interesting because I was like, when they first left Ohio State, I was like, why the hell would you leave Ohio State? It feels like they don't just produce first-round receivers. Every receiver has been good in the NFL. Like every single one. Like the worst one has been Marvin Harrison, but I think he's gonna have a very good year this coming year. And also he's not even bad. I think he's gone 1,000 yards every year. And then I looked, the last guy to transfer out of Ohio State was Jamison Williams. So then I was like, well, you know what? Maybe Ohio State just has a better receiving room than we think this year. Maybe guys like Brandon Inniss will be better than we think. But I also want to talk about another receiver who we were talking about before, Jordan Faison. And I know he's former lacrosse player, all that. He's my Bolitnikov pick this year.
Wow.
And, yeah, I know. And it sounds crazy, but I think him and CJ Carr have such a good connection. And this is what I like. I know he only had, I think, like 700 yards last year, but in like the big games, like he wasn't a guy who was like getting 30-yard receptions, but when it was like 3rd and 7, Notre Dame need a first down. That's who CJ Carr looked to. And yes, I know Greenhouse redshirted last year and wasn't necessarily playing. And I know that could change this year. But it's just, I feel like Faison and Carr have such a good, safe connection. Like it's kind of like a Brady and like Edelman type of thing. Where Faison, he's not the biggest guy, not the fastest, not the play. He's just he knows how to get open and he knows how to get a quick 7-8 yard reception. And with how good Notre Dame's passing offense is going to be this year, I think Faison's going to get like a lot more touchdowns and red zone looks like that we think. Like I could see Faison having a lot of not a lot of these games, but like some games where it's like 8 receptions, 55 yards, but 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And I know those aren't necessarily Bolitnikov numbers with the 55 yards, but also Mekhi Lumen, he didn't have 1,600 yards. Like he had a lot of chunk receptions like that too, and I think Faison will turn those 5-6 yard receptions into 14-15 yard receptions this year.
No, that's a good call, man. That's super bold. I wish I was trying to look up the odds for the Bolitnikov. They don't really give those out.
Yeah,
I don't think publicly until like midseason. It's gonna be tough with like Malachi Tony, Jeremiah Smith, but there are also some guys like you mentioned, like Bolitnikov Award winner, like Skylar Bell had a great year, but he was a guy at UConn, and then it was Mekhi Lumen and Jeremiah Smith. I don't think it's a bad call at all. I do worry about how deep it is if CJ Carr is going to kind of spread the ball around, or is he going to go to Faison pretty early? And I would agree with you. Their connection's insane. I think Faison's ability just to recognize coverage, to run a lot of option routes, and he's a silky route runner. I'm a big fan of him. He'll be a guy that gets drafted 2nd or 3rd day that we talk about on Sundays as a guy that's playing in the slot, catching balls for Drake May that gets kind of drafted late, but gets more production in the slot. So I'm excited for him, man. I think him he was great at lacrosse, but this last year you saw the huge improvement where they needed somebody to kind of be that go-to target. It was like Malachi Fields, and then they would kind of find out who would be that second wide receiver for him. And Fajon was that guy. So now you have another offseason without lacrosse. I agree with you, man. I'm excited to see what Jordan Fajon is. And I wouldn't be shocked if I was looking earlier trying to predict who are captains. He would be another guy to me that would be, if I had to predict my captains, CJ Carr, him, Don Schuler, and then Drake Bowman would be my four picks.
And then, yeah, and then kind of transitioning to the defense. And I know we touched on the running game and O line. I mean, running game and O line for Notre Dame is like receivers for USC. No matter what, it's always good. Even under Clay Hill, USC had Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drake London and Pittman and all that. But going to the defense, last year, like going into last year, you guys did lose a lot of people, and people were like, "Oh, I don't know about the defense. We lost Al Golden, we lost some guys." It seemed like, I will say, it's not fun, Miami getting dominated by Miami's offensive line, then having A&M put 41 on you guys. But after that, I feel like you guys were forcing a lot of turnovers. Like USC, I think, had like 3-4 turnovers against you guys. I mean, Pitt, you just pretty much shut Pitt out. And so, what are your just quick thoughts about the defense this year?
Yeah, I think it all starts with the secondary. I think it's the best secondary in the country. Obviously,
Leonard
everyone
Moore.
knows Leonard Moore, who came in 2024 after Morrison, our stud number one corner, was out. He came in and didn't miss a beat. Was honestly better than Morrison in his freshman year, and he's gonna be a top 5 player in college football. I don't need to ramble too much about him. But anytime you have a guy that you don't have to worry about him on a one-on-one situation, it just creates so much advantages for your defense. On the flip side of things, they got DJ McKinney, who's going to be that second corner, the Colorado transfer. I'm excited to see him. Lengthy corners. He's 6'2" as well. And then Christian Gray, who's been the longtime cornerback on the opposite side of Leonard Moore.
He's what I want to talk about.
Yeah, they're actually moving him to nickel, which I'm super excited to see how he does. Usually cornerbacks. That's one thing I think, if I had to say, like, what's Notre Dame's best skill set as a secondary, is they're all really good at catching the football. All really good at tracking the football. They had like 24, 21 interceptions last year, which was one of the top in college football, and they'll do that once again. And then on the backside with the Don Schuler and Tate Johnson. Tate Johnson's got the potential of being a first rounder just because he's a 6'2" safety who can run and he's aggressive downhill. Anytime you get a guy like that, prospects and NFL scouts will start talking about you. And then a Don Schuler is like Xavier Watts, who not a lot of people talk about him. He'll probably be a 3rd or 4th round guy, but he'll start immediately in the NFL like Xavier Watts did for the Falcons this past year. And then obviously you got an experienced linebacking core coming back with Bowen, Asbury, KVA, Kingston, who had an ACL injury in the back end of last year, who we expect a lot for this year. And then Snead as well, too. And then the defensive line, where they went into the portal and they got 3 of the top 10 transfer portal guys, one from Oregon, one from Alabama, and another from Pitt, to combat with Bryce Young, who we expect some. Bryce Young and the other guy, number 5, who I can't really pronounce his name, Territor, are 2 guys that they expect a lot of production out of, and they expect those 2 to be able to be, they don't want to blitz a ton. Like, they're a team that wants to bring 3 or 4 guys, bring their linebackers back and have them sit in coverage, read, react, and have their secondary playing man. And if you're able to do that, like, that's such a big advantage. We saw Indiana last year. They weren't a big blitzing team either. It's just a numbers game, right? You got more guys in coverage. You got more guys out in space. And you're able to dominate with 4 or 3 guys rushing versus 5 or 6. So this Notre Dame defense, I think they'll run through their defense. I know the CJ Carr gets a lot of the publicity, and deservingly so. He's a quarterback, and this offense is spectacular, and it's going to be fun to watch this year. Kind of more of that pass friendly offense. But man, this defense is going to be tough to stop. This defense is going to be tough to run against and pass. So
yeah, and I think the thing with Notre Dame is, since Notre Dame always has a good defense, they're not really talking about them this year because they finally have like a couple like good first round picks on offense. Also, DJ McKinney, he's one of those guys that I think scouts are just gonna love. Where I'm not saying he's gonna have a crazy elite year, but he's long and he's lanky, and like, I mean, look at guys like Richard Sherman, like 6'2" corners like that. Like, I think scouts are just gonna fall in love with him. Also, Keon Keeley, I think he's a transfer that no one's talking about. And since I love recruiting, I follow this stuff. He was a big time recruit for Alabama. I think he was.
Yeah, he committed to Notre Dame out of high school, I think.
Yeah. I think he decommitted, went to Saban, and then had his time at Bama. Didn't really play. Which, that's one of the examples of transfer portal. Maybe that's good because you commit to another coach, to a completely another system. Then Kalen DeBoer comes in. But Keon Keeley can be a guy where all of a sudden we're in like November, we're like, wow, that guy's going to be like a mid-first round pick. Like, that guy's good.
Yeah, and he's 6'5", too, which is like insane to have that as a defensive tackle. Like, their D-line next year is going to be tall. Like, their average D-line is going to be around 6'5", 6'6", 250, 280, 290. It's gonna be ridiculous.
Yeah. You remember a couple years ago, the Georgia D line in like 2021, the average weight of it was like 335 or something like that. Like
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I think like the Notre Dame's gonna be like, but for height. You're gonna be like, all these guys are like 6'4". Like it's
Yeah.
absurd. But yeah, no, we got the offense, we got the defense down. Now we're gonna transition to the schedule. All right, I know we were talking about the schedule earlier and like how it was maybe softer than normal. And I do believe, like I said, this does look, but in Notre Dame's defense, Wisconsin wasn't always this bad. For anyone younger than like 16-year olds watching this, Wisconsin's good. But a game I want to talk about that no one except Josh Pate has talked about, but I mean Josh Pate's so good he talks about everything. BYU right here,
Mm.
October 17th. And that's going to be a game that gets overshadowed that day because that's one of those days where there's like six like insane games. I believe that's the day of Bama, Georgia, or it could be anyways, it's an insane game.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just one of those games where if you're Notre Dame, let's just be honest, they're going to be 6-0 going into this game. I think that's pretty obvious. And you look at if you're Notre Dame, you're like, we got the bye week next week. Let's kind of go in. But let's say, and I don't know why I have this in my head. This could very well be a 10:30 Eastern time kickoff. 10:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be a night game. I think
Night
it very
game.
could be a night game, depending on what network
Mhm.
gets it. And obviously, like if ESPN gets it, I think it'll be kind of like a morning
10:30.
game, like
Mhm.
kind of like a 10 a.m. game on the West Coast or 1 p.m. or whatever. But if NBC gets it, like maybe they'll do make it a night game, like you said too. As a Notre Dame fan, I would hope it's not at night, but I do think
It's going to
I
be
think
ESPN or Fox.
it's be
Um,
ESPN or Fox. Yeah, true. Yeah, Fox could do the same thing, or they
yeah.
can make it a big noon kickoff, which they've always
Yeah.
done
Well,
too.
I just want to look at the schedule that week real fast. I believe that's the week. Oh no, there's Penn State at Michigan that week, so that's probably going to be the big noon kickoff game for Fox. Um, oh yeah, Ohio State, Indiana that week. Okay, yeah, no chance that's the big noon kickoff. It's going to be Ohio State, Indiana, so it's going to be most likely it's probably a night game no matter what, honestly. It's either going to be an 8 p.m. Eastern kick Fox game, or if it's an ESPN game, it's 12 o'clock. But the problem with the ESPN, I'm looking at the schedule right now. You have Bam at Tennessee, so that's the seventh. So long story short, it's either going to be, I feel like, a 12 o'clock game or an 8 o'clock game. But even a 12 o'clock game, like a morning game, Notre Dame might not get like, I don't know. That just seems like a complicated game to me and a pretty, I don't want to say losable game, but like, don't look past it.
I'm not. I'm respectfully going to disagree because I don't think BYU. I don't think their quarterback's good. I'm a big BYU hater. Big BYU
Okay.
hater. I think the program's overrated. I think besides LJ Martin, I got
Yeah.
to obviously dive in more because we were talking beforehand, like the Big 12, all this stuff, doing some offseason prep. So I got to do even more prep on this team. So this is like a surface level answer here. But from what I saw them last year against Texas Tech, they couldn't even score like
Yeah.
at all on the road. That Big 12 game performance was horrible. And then you saw what Texas Tech did against Oregon.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
not going to. I don't think Bear Bachmeyer can throw the football. So if they can kind of stack the box and basically force them to run them down their throat and force them to throw those one-on-one on the outside, which I don't know if BYU will have that depth at wide receiver. I get it. The atmosphere, I think, will maybe get Notre Dame a little rattled early. I
Yeah.
think if it's a night game, like I'm not disagreeing with you at all on terms of that standpoint, but I think in terms of like the talent on both sides, I think Notre Dame beats them by 14. And I get
Yeah.
like the intrigue of it, and we'll see like October 17th. How does BYU look? Have they played some notable Big 12 teams? Have they played Houston? Have they played Texas Tech on their schedule? I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know if they have some kind of hard opponent before
No,
that.
they don't really have like anyone. Like BYU will probably be, I'll double check it real fast, but they probably will be going into this game undefeated and probably like a top 15 team if they start the year at 12. Yeah, no.
Which is great
They're
for Notre Dame
like yeah,
because they
their
need
only
any
tough
ranking possible.
yeah, their only tough game is at TCU, and that's like in TCU they just lost like they lost Josh Hoover. But yeah, so we're gonna go to Notre Dame's worst case scenario now. So I know you're definitely not gonna agree with this one in terms of losses. I know there's one other losable. So worst case scenario is 10-2, which is most of the team's best case scenarios, which I've done so far. But like we said before, 10-2 for Notre Dame does not get them in the playoff because that's like 8-4 for like a Big Ten or SEC team. And I want to talk about the SMU game real fast. I go to SMU. SMU's not beating Notre Dame. It's going to be 25 degrees there and probably a little snow. SMU's not beating them. I think the only two
Yeah.
teams I see having a chance to win is at BYU and then Miami, which we're going to talk about that game because that's going to be probably the game of the year in my opinion. But if BYU was at South Bend, no chance they beat Notre Dame. But what are your thoughts? Worst case scenario, 10-2.
Yeah, 10-2. It would be disappointing to lose to BYU. I think that's a game that they should win.
They should.
On the road, two touchdown favorite. I think in that game will be 12 and a half. I agree with you. I think it's got to be 11-1, just like they did a couple years ago when they lost to NIU, but their only game was A&M. I think Miami's going to be a really fun game. I'm excited to see what Mensa will do, in that offense. They got Barricade too, is one of his best wide receivers at Duke. And then you got Fletcher and
And Tony.
obviously
Oh
they
my
lose some offensive
God.
linemen
So
and
sad.
defensive linemen too. Um, you know, going to the draft that you lose from Miami, but you bring in Wilson from Damon Wilson from Mizzou. You bring some guys from Georgia. Like they're going to be very good. Like Miami will be a top 6 team, and I agree with you. Like I think that game. I think Ohio State, Indiana. I think Oregon or whoever they play. Like there's some quality games this year that we're going to see in football
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
So yeah, worst case scenario 10-2, and I'm gonna be honest, this is not likely at all. And I say best case scenario 12-0, obviously. Not much to say. This is just assuming, you beat by BYU per normal. But like I said, I could be one of those games in the first quarter where I could see it being like 7-3 BYU. But I do
Mm.
ultimately think Notre Dame wins that game. You'll see with my pick in a minute. And with Miami, I'm gonna be honest, I feel like people are overrating the aspect of the cold weather, and here's the only reason why. Miami plays like they're a Big Ten or like a Big Ten team. I mean, and also with Miami's offensive line, I just want to talk about real fast. I know they just had like three guys go to the NFL. I think it's gonna be one of those programs where they just keep refurbishing on the offensive line. It's gonna be
Oh
like
yeah.
Ohio State with receivers. Like you lose like JSN and then Jeremiah Smith and Cardinal Tate come in. Like that's in my opinion what's gonna be.
Yeah.
And obviously you think best case, 12-0.
Yeah, I think 12-0. I mean, the Miami game, obviously, we'll see what happens, what Notre Dame will look like by then, what Miami will look like by then, how Mints will even transition, go into Miami. But I think 12-0 is very realistic for this team. And, you do get a little worried about how soft their schedule is. And I think I saw something that when Notre Dame plays their last game, well, who is it? Is it Is
Syracuse.
it Syracuse? Yeah, their last game, Syracuse. I don't think they play again for like a month. So that's
Yeah.
like the kind of biggest worry. If you are a Notre Dame team, if they do have a first round bye, we'll see, what happens here with the 4 seeds, the rankings and stuff like that too. If they get a bye or if they get the 5 seed, which I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, you would rather hope that you get that home field playoff game.
Yeah.
But I think 12-0 is very likely for this team. I just you can't convince me outside of Miami that they're going to lose to any of these other teams. I just
And
can't.
yeah, and that's
Unless
why.
there's injuries, which would be horrible. Like
Yeah,
if CJ Carr gets hurt, the season's done. Like
yeah,
their quarterback depth is not good, especially with Minchie on too.
yeah.
So
And I will say I wanted to talk about Kenny Minchie earlier. But I don't know what I kind of agree. Transfer away, I just don't really. I will say Kentucky. That's a very underrated team. But I say my most likely is 11-1. And I'm gonna be honest. As of right now, I would pick you guys to beat Miami at home. But the only reason I say you're most likely isn't 12-0 is how hard it is to go undefeated in the modern college football. Yes, I know out of all the potential playoff teams, you guys have the softest schedule in the country. But just so many, there's so many happens. People also forget these teams aren't as deep as they used to be. Like this isn't 2012 Notre Dame where you got Mint Ideo and like all these other guys. Like and Ronnie Staley. Like I just 11-1, and like I said, the only losable games Miami. I mean, maybe like you lose. Yeah, I can't even think of. I'm
which
sorry. I
isn't a
can't
bad. I mean, 11-1 isn't a bad thing either. I mean,
yeah,
them losing, like we've seen Notre Dame after losses. Like sometimes you got to lose to kind of get your stuff in check. Like you got to be in a reality check, especially in late November. There's gonna be a lot on that game because of that game. Basically, week 1 last year was the reason why they missed the playoff. Now you get them at home. There's gonna be a lot of building on that game. I'm excited to see how those Miami boys will be in the cold because it is going to be freezing. It is
yeah.
not
No,
going
that
to
would be
be
a
a
game.
comfortable game for them, and especially Malachi Fields. Like Malachi Tony too. Like last year, I think majority of their games, like 10 out of their 12 games, they played in Florida, and
Oh
then
yeah,
you transition to A&M, who's hot, not cold outside. Then you just
yeah,
get domes for the rest of the CFP too.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah, yeah. And also, whatchamacallit, if I do want to bring up something for Notre Dame too, because I'm just looking at the numbers right now. So their last game in the regular season is November 28th. And this is why I think it will help if they lose a game and won't get a top 4 bye. The next spot they will play if they have a first round bye, the earliest possible slot is New Year's Eve.
wow,
So
wow.
that's why maybe losing a game, like let's say you're undefeated,
So New
maybe
Year's Eve is that second round, or is that's not the
that's
first
a
round, right?
second, no, it's the second round.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
it'd be like when the four like New Year's Six Bulls start, or like that's why maybe if you're 11-0, you're going to Syracuse, maybe losing to Syracuse and getting a home playoff game and getting that five or
Nah,
six.
nah,
I
nah.
know you. I know.
Can't
I'm not
can't
saying
do that. Can't do that.
no.
Can't do that.
No. I'm not saying they should ever intentionally lose a game. But like, if you're a fan, would you rather be a 2 or 3 seed and have to, wait a month where the only, team that got a bye that was one is Indiana. But in my opinion, Indiana is just an anomaly. I don't think anything they did last season is kind of relevant to any other team in college football.
Mhm.
That's never happening again. It's like the '04 Red Sox. Like that just doesn't make sense. Um, but I do believe whatchamacallit. Let's say you lose to like a SMU or Syracuse at the end of the season, you're a 5 seed and you get like Boise State first round. Are you really mad about that?
Not no, not entirely. I mean, they're a team that's done it before where they've made it all the way. Like, right, they've had like 4 games straight and they made the college football playoff. I don't think you would want that to happen necessarily,
Yeah.
obviously, but like I think Marcus Freeman's got him right. I think he's the right coach to put him in the situation where if they do have a first round bye and the long time off that they can manage something and um, hopefully get their, feet under them and play well in that game. But that's definitely a big worry. I mean, one team in the past 2 years has won in the first round is definitely something that, if you're a Notre Dame fan, that you would not want. But I don't think it's something that you're crying over if you don't get a first round game. If anything, like it gives you more time to get flights and go see them
Yeah.
in person. So
Yeah. There you go. Um, any last thoughts about this Notre Dame team before we end the video or?
shoot, man. Top five team. I'm excited to see them in the college football playoff against some of these other teams. I think if they can stay healthy, I think one thing that just to keep an eye on for Notre Dame, and Texas has done this and Oregon's done this, and that's why they've had a lot of guys that were retained, is they do rotate a lot of guys early because they want to get guys playing reps. Because at the end of the day, like you start August, September, and the season's not going to end until almost February. So it's like you have a long season where, yeah, they have a tough, they don't have a great schedule. Don't be surprised, like if some of these receivers get rotated pretty early, if some of these DBs, maybe defensive line, just to kind of get some rotation, get something under them because in that college football playoff, when things do get grueler, when those hits do get harder and people do get injured, you're going to have those guys that have played the first couple of weeks that aren't going to come in with like their eyes wide open because they had some of those reps early on. But yeah, man, I think Notre Dame's gonna be fun. Vegas national championship this year. I think you got Notre Dame. You got obviously Georgia, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana. I think it's gonna be a great college football season, and it's fun seeing Notre Dame in the equation again every year because back when they had Brian Kelly, this was not the case.
And
So
to think that people said they would be worse off without Brian Kelly. I know it's
I
easy saying
know,
that now,
man.
but
It's
that's a
so
whole nother
crazy.
video. That is a whole
Looking back on it, the fact that like the story of the players going up to the AD's office and saying Marcus Freeman should be the coach, and them getting a guy that's never even coached before, and then he loses to Ohio State, then loses to Marshall, and everyone wants to cut his throat. Then he loses to Northern Illinois. Everyone wants to get even more
yeah.
mad at him to where it's at right now. I think he's definitely a guy where I would say the next 5 years it would be he could maybe go to the NFL, but I also think he's a guy that like strives and prides himself on building those relationships
Yeah.
and being kind of that father figure to his players. Where I also don't think he wants to leave. I think he wants to kind of create his own name in college football and bring Notre Dame a national championship. And I think with him at the front, like there's no doubt that in the next 5, 10 years, he'll definitely do.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you, Jackson, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, no, enjoy Jackson on Three and Out will be linked in the description. Thanks for coming on. I wish the Irish the best of luck this season.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, man.